This is Ray Stokes in the Special Collection section of the TCOM Library on December the 1st, 1988. Today I'm proud to have a guest who is a long-time friend of mine, who's been a friend of mine since 1947 or 1948. I first met him as a member of the Riverside Lion Club when he and I were both active in that particular club. We both have remained Lions down through the years, but we're not together at different clubs now. I refer to a man who has had an enviable career in osteopathy, and he has been practicing for about 47 or 48 years, but we let him do the talking. I'd like to this time welcome and recognize a very good friend of mine, Dr. Virgil L. Jennings. Dr. Jennings, good to have you here with us today.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
And I want to start our little discussion by asking you a very personal question. I've known you now, as I said earlier, for better than 40 years. We used to even square dance together.
Right.
Back in the 40s when, well, it's still popular in some circles, but not as popular with us now, I'm sure.
Right.
But nevertheless, back in those days, and once in a while I run across one of our mutual friends who might refer to you, or when I say something about I talked to Dr. Dude today, they might know who I'm talking about, but most people probably today wouldn't know who Dude is. Tell me, how did you get your nickname of Dude?
Well, my grandfather lived in Joplin, Missouri, and he taught me to tell people when they asked me my name that I was a Joplin dude in a 10-cent sport. And that dude carried over with me all through my adolescent years, even childhood and adolescent years, and even after I went away to universities. So most of my old-time friends know my nickname as Dude.
But most of your newer friends don't necessarily refer to you as Dude.
And Virgil.
You're Virgil.
Is really
Right. Well, you have a career that has, like I say, stretched over some 47 or 48 years, and I think your career started you got out of school long about 1940. Now you have 3 diplomas in medicine. Mm-hmm. I'd like for you to kind of start off by explaining your first degree, your second degree, and then, well, you have a 3rd diploma, but kind of tie it in with the other 2. What's your first degree, and when did you get it, and where did you get it?
Well, I attended the University of Tulsa first.
Yeah.
And then I graduated from the Kansas City College of Osteopathic Medicine.
Now, what year was that?
In 1940.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2 years later, I received a degree from the Kansas City University of Physicians and Surgeons, an MD degree.
Now, how did that come about?
Well, I took two additional years after my osteopathic work, and I was given credit for that. And I was anxious to know the different philosophies of the 2 schools, the allopathic school and the osteopathic school. And I had another degree of Doctor of Public Health that was given after I got my MD degree.
I see. That's what your 3rd diploma is.
That's right, in public health.
Mm-hmm. What year was that? Do you recall?
Well, that was, I believe, 1943. That was just before I went to San Antonio.
Now, how did you go to San Antonio? How did you get introduced to Texas?
Well, I accepted an internship at the Robert B. Greene Hospital in San Antonio.
Now, was that a DO hospital?
No, the Robert B. Greene was affiliated with the University of Texas.
Mm-hmm.
That was how I got the MD degree and how I happened to get the internship and residency at the Robert B. Greene in San Antonio, because it's affiliated with the University of Texas.
I see. Then what happened to you after you left San Antonio?
After I left San Antonio, I moved to Fort Worth in 1946. And Dr. Roy Fisher.
Well, wait a minute. Let me interrupt, because I know a little bit about your background.
Okay.
Now, what happened to the years that you were in Oklahoma practicing with a very good friend of ours?
Well,
that was before 46, wasn't it?
I retract that statement. My memory kind of.
That's all right. We understand mine too. But I wasn't trying to correct you. But I did happen to know that you had a practice in Oklahoma before you came here.
I moved to Muskogee with Dr. Mcculloch.
Yeah. Now, who is Dr. Mcculloch?
Dr. Mcculloch was my partner and one of my very, very closest friends. And while we were in Muskogee, we worked at the Eastern Oklahoma Hospital for about 2 years. And
that'd be approximately, what, 1944, 45, somewhere in there?
Long in that area.
Yeah.
And then we had the Mcculloch and Jennings Clinic for about 1.5 years. And it was from there that he decided to go back to Tulsa and practice. And I decided to take this internship at the Robert B. Greene in San Antonio.
Oh, and then you went from there to San Antonio, and then you came from San Antonio here. I understand.
That's correct.
Right. And you got here then 46 or
46 in March, February, March of 46 is correct.
Okay. Now you were alluding to a part of your life that we'll get into in a minute about your association you had with various hospitals.
Okay.
Before we get into that, when you first came to Fort Worth, where was your practice?
Well, I started practice on East Belknap in Fort Worth.
East Belknap, there, what we call Six Points out in Riverside. Then that's where you were actually practicing when I first met you in about 47 or 48. You are a family practitioner or a general practitioner.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about some of the organizations that you belong to, some of your societies or academy.
I hardly know where to start.
You hardly know where to start? Well, let's start with what does the FACGP mean?
That's the Fellow American College of General Practitioners.
Would that be the first honor that you received?
Well, yes. I was president of the State Association of the General Practitioners.
I see. What year was that?
Well, that was about 1952 or 3.
I see. That's long about the time, wasn't Dr. George Lubel, wasn't he president of the Texas Association long about that time? 1950, 51?
I forgot what year, but yes.
About the same time.
It wasn't far from there, yes.
What other distinctions have you received?
Well, I was president of the Alumni Association of the Kansas City College of Osteopathic Medicine.
All right.
And
I can relate to that because I work for some of these presidents of alumni associations on the side now.
And I was president for a year, and that's when I really first got interested in preventive medicine. I mean, it was only a start, but that's when I got the primary interest.
Okay, we'll have a lot more to say about preventive medicine in the meantime. Let's take you from after you've been here in practice and got acquainted with some of the DOs. There weren't too many DOs here in Fort Worth in 1946.
No, that's right.
But, of course, some of the pioneers that I know you're well familiar with because you're one of them. But you had a little difficulty, I'm sure, when you had a patient to get in the hospital. You could get the patient in the hospital, but you couldn't get in the hospital yourself.
That's right.
So tell me something about the few of you that started the first osteopathic hospital here in Fort Worth.
Well, Dr. Roy Fisher and Dr. Lubel.
Yeah, and they're still active, both of them.
Still active. And myself, and Dr. Danny Byers, and Dr. McAnally.
Yeah, McAnally, right.
And there were 5 or 6 that were really active when the hospital was first.
And was Phil Russell involved in that too?
Phil Russell was involved, not from the very beginning, but shortly, a few months after we got started.
Okay, and then just follow through your procedure. In other words, you've got a great institution across the street from here now. Kind of lead us up into what made that possible.
Well, gradually, we got more interest in other DOs, and Roy Fisher was kind enough to offer his home as a place to start the hospital. And we both moved to Fort Worth the same month. I was doing surgery then, and he was doing surgery.
Well, didn't you teach surgery sometime in the past?
Well, I taught surgery and had some classes at the nursing home, the nursing school in San Antonio when I was with the Robert B. Greene.
I see.
I taught obstetrics and gynecology at that time. But it was surprising the interest that the few DOs had, and Phil Russell was responsible for the cooperation of, trying to think the name of the publisher.
Amon Carter?
Amon Carter Sr.
Right, right.
Amon Carter Sr. and Sid Richardson
Right.
both contributed to the building of the hospital on Camp Bowie.
In other words, they had a pretty good sized hand in the
That's
operation.
right. And
huh?
Phil Russell was responsible for this primarily.
I see.
And I was the first president of the organization. In fact, I remember Sidney Samuels was the attorney
Right. Yeah.
that was responsible for incorporating the Fort Worth Osteopathic Hospital Incorporated.
And that was 46 or?
That was in 46. That's right.
Then where did you go after you left the converted home that you had there on Summit as the first hospital?
We moved over on Camp Bowie.
Yeah.
And of course, that's the Boulevard, was the Boulevard Hospital after.
That's just west of where Montgomery and Camp Bowie intersect now.
That's right. That's right. And then, of course, we outgrew that in a few years.
How many beds did you have there?
Well, I'm thinking it's 25 or so, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, right.
And then, of course, we got real ambitious and wanted to expand. And Amon Carter again came to Dr. Phil Russell's.
He was more involved at that. I mean, Dr. Russell was more involved then, I guess.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
He became involved.
Yeah.
And I was on the real estate committee. In fact, I bought several pieces of property where the medical school here is and where the hospital is. And
you mean you used to be an owner? You used to own some of the property that we're on now, huh?
well, I didn't own them personally, but
You bought them for the corporation.
I bought them for the foundation.
I see. Okay.
And I would communicate with Amon Carter Sr. on telephone primarily in buying property. And it was a secret as to who was buying the property.
I understand.
They couldn't understand why I was trying to block up land.
Some people wouldn't want those osteopaths around, would they?
Well, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Or they would want to increase the price of, if they thought had a project going
That's right.
that would be worthwhile.
Yeah, that's it exactly. Okay, then where did you go? How long did it take you to get it pretty well established?
Well,
You remember when you took in the first patient there?
no, I don't recall the exact year. I don't remember what, but it was.
Was it about
early
1955, something
Yes,
like that?
in the early 50s.
Was the Jack Taverner bowling alley that we're now part of, was it down the street from you
Yes,
at the
it
time?
was. It was.
I guess it was operating
That's
pretty
right.
well at that
That's
full,
right.
full blast at that
That's
time.
right.
All right, how long were you identified with the Fort Worth Osteopathic Hospital? You may still be identified.
Well,
Maybe that's
I'm
the wrong phrasing, but what I mean is you were very active.
I'm kind of an honorary staff member. I'm not
see.
active because I'm not doing any hospital work.
Right. Well, when did you
But-
get active other than the hospital? You
Well,
had
I might
other
say-
interests.
Well, I might say this. Right across the street from the hospital, where the medical school is now, I built a professional building.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Professional building. There
Right,
was
that red
about-
brick.
That's right, red brick.
Right.
In fact, that's just about where we are right now.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Roy Fisher had an office there.
Yeah, yes, he did.
Yeah.
Roy Fisher and
And
Noel
Dr.
Ellis. and
Noel Ellis,
Dr.
Virginia
Johnson,
Ellis,
Dr. Johnson, Dr. Mel Johnson.
Mel Johnson,
Uh,
and Bill Rennell.
Dr. Olson, yes, Bill
Yeah,
Rennell.
yeah.
So it was very convenient and helped to advance
Well, I
the
didn't
profession.
know. You were telling me something I hadn't heard. I didn't know that you were
Yeah.
responsible for the building,
Yeah,
that building.
I did. Yeah. John Knox Road was the contractor, and it was a very pleasant venture and
I see.
a progressive step for the profession.
Yeah, right. Then when did you become interested in moving east from the hill here on Arlington Heights?
Well,
Of course, you'd already east. You were officing out
Yes.
in Riverside.
yes.
But,
Of course, one thing that I have omitted, when I moved to Fort Worth, I was interested in surgery primarily,
Mhm.
but my father used to be a building contractor, so
Wow.
I had an interest in building. Now, the first 18
that's
years.
an extracurricular activity.
right.
Okay.
So the first 18 years that I was in Fort Worth, I had something under construction besides all these other things that I was trying to take care of.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm leading you up to the Hurst General Hospital.
Let's see.
Will you give us a little information about
Well,
that?
In about 1959, I think that's accurate,
Mhm.
I bought 30 acres of land out at Hearst. And I built a hospital out there. In fact, I had 5 other fellows that were interested. They were interested only in a small way financially, but I needed some commitments.
Right.
So we built the Hurst General Hospital, and
That's on Brown Trail, isn't it?
on Brown Trail in Hearst.
Mhm.
Yes.
What is that building now? We're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but what's it being used for now?
Well, the Allied Lab, the Hospital Corporation of America, owns that now.
I see.
And they outgrew the size of the building, so they have built a new North Community Hospital in on the Airport Freeway.
Right. Mhm.
Northeast Community, yes, that's
Yeah.
it.
Northeast Community.
That's
That's the outgrowth of the
Hurst
Hurst General.
That's right.
Right.
Now, I dedicated the Hurst General Hospital to Dr. Mcculloch,
Dr. Mcculloch. What's his given name?
Robert
Bob McCulloch.
Robert Dale McCulloch.
Yeah, Dr. Bob. He was president of Lions International at one time.
At one time. In fact, getting back to Muskogee again, we joined the Lions Club the same day.
So you've been a Lion since what year? Then 40 or 41?
Yes.
Mhm,
And so I'm still an active member at the Downtown Lions Club here in Fort Worth.
Right.
But I dedicated the Hurst General Hospital to Bob because he was such a deserving individual. And 4 years before that, in 1957, he was president of the American Osteopathic Association.
Yes, he was. That's right.
See? So I felt because of his hard work and endeavors to improve the profession that he was deserving. So I had a large picture.
Whatever happened to that picture?
I have it in my office.
You have it in your office?
When the Hospital Corporation of America bought the Hearst General, well, and they were moving, well, I asked for the picture back because they didn't have any particular personal interest.
I understand. He has a son that's still practicing there in Tulsa,
Yes,
doesn't he?
Robert Mcculloch II. And he's certified in internal medicine with a group, and he's been very, very successful. And he is now presently Speaker of the House of the American Osteopathic Association.
Oh, he is, huh?
Yes, he is. So he's been very, very successful.
Well, tell me, in Hurst General, before we leave Hurst General, how many beds was in that hospital?
Well, the first, it was 30 beds to begin with. Then the addition was put on at about 35 more beds. So it was around between 65 and 70 beds.
When it was became when you sold out and it
That's
became
right.
Northeast, they built Northeast Community. One of the administrators out at Hearst is now the administrator over at FWOH.
Yes,
John Hawkins.
That's right.
Yeah. Did you hire him?
No, he was hired by the administrator out there, Mr.
Well, that's
Golding.
right. He was an assistant when he was out
That's
there,
right.
wasn't he?
That's right.
Then he went from here to Corpus and then came up here from Corpus.
That's right. Well, I'd forgotten he went to Corpus, but I guess he did.
Yeah, I think he's down there about a
But
year.
he's been very successful. I understand that he has been elected as chairman of the hospital,
Chairman or president?
well, chairman or president of the Hospital Association of Dallas and Fort Worth. 80 hospitals involved, and
That many.
and he's been 80.
Yeah.
and that he is
Yeah, I
heading
read that, something about him
just
recently
this,
in that.
yes, just this past week,
Sure
I
did.
think.
Yeah.
Saw that in the paper.
Okay, well, now we've gotten through FWOH and Hurst General, which is now Northeast Community. Are you on the staff at Northeast Community now?
Well, only in an honorary way. I don't
Honorary
practice
way.
or do any hospital
Yeah.
work because this is really, I'm approaching my 49th year of practice. now,
49.
so
I was
think-
wrong when I said 48.
Well, I was in my 48. I'm
Okay.
starting at 48.
Fine. Well, you're
We're
going
arguing over 12 months.
You know, it's something else we have in common. You know, we used to square dance together, and we ate the same bread at the Lions Club, and our paths have crossed quite often down through the last 40 years. But another thing that we have in common is that we both belong to the Zipper Club.
That's right.
You know what the Zipper Club is, don't you?
Yeah,
Heart bypass.
that's right. That's right.
Did you have a triple?
No, I had an angioplasty in the morning and a double bypass in the
Double.
afternoon.
Well, I'm ahead of you. I had a triple.
Well,
Yeah.
that's good.
But we had it about the same time.
Yeah, that was in
Yeah.
85.
That's right.
That's-
Well, mine was in 83. But
Was it?
Yeah, right.
That's it.
Yeah.
How old
Go
are
ahead.
you now, Ray?
Well, I was 75 last Thanksgiving.
75.
You're about 77.
That's great.
I did my homework.
Yes, you did. I think it-
Okay. Well, I tell you now, Dr. Dude, I'm going to call you Dude.
Okay.
As you, like I say, you've had a very enviable career now for some 49 years, and I'm sure you'll reach the half-century mark, and no question as far as your practice is concerned. You have limited your practice more to a particular specialty,
Yes.
and it's known as you're one of the pioneers in preventive medicine.
That's right.
Just start from scratch, shall we say, and bring us up to date on what your initial interest was in that type of prevention, and what you've been involved in. You've headed the international association.
Yeah.
Kind of bring us up to date on your involvement and where you stand currently and what your current practice is in preventive medicine.
Well, to begin with, I was interested in preventive medicine probably in the early 60s. And I progressively attained more interest as I started treating patients and getting results from teaching them how to eat, how to exercise, and mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you incorporate these three things together, it's surprising how much.
What are they again now?
Well, nutrition,
Mhm.
exercise, and mental health.
Mental health.
So your attitude has a lot to do with it. You know, there's a saying, you are what you eat.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you aren't only what you eat, but you're what you absorb and what you think. Your mental attitude has a lot to do with this. And I think if you don't incorporate these things, you're not progressing very much. One of the basic factors that I'm interested in is finding out about the genetic background of patients. If they have a profile, a genetic profile that's of one type or another, you need to treat the family problems as well as you do the current health problems. But then getting back to the interest, in 1968, Dr. Mcculloch and I and Dr. Brennan, now Dr. Brennan, R.O. Brennan, was a professor in Kansas City and a very close friend of Dr. Bob's and mine.
Mm-hmm.
And we started the Osteopathic Preventive Medicine group. In fact, that was the name of it. And it was really Dr. Brennan's idea to have an organization of this kind. But after the first 2 years, there was so much interest in other professional people that we changed the name to the International Academy of Preventive Medicine, because we had many dentists, many MDs, many DOs, and other professional people that were interested in this. And after we changed the name, it ended up that we had 5 different foreign countries involved.
5 different countries.
Yes. In fact, it was surprising the interest that was generated when we changed the name and we started having postgraduate lectures and so forth. Like Dr. Linus Pauling, Roger Williams.
Roger Williams. We want to talk more about him in a minute.
And several other outstanding educators became interested in it. And so at one time, we had about 1,000 doctors that were involved in this organization.
Now, what period did that cover?
Well, this started really in about 1970, because it was about 68 when the...
Then you were getting involved in that about the time we were building TCOM.
Right. That's right. So, let's see. I'm trying to think what year. Yes, it was 68, and then we changed the name, and from then on it really grew.
Kind of snowballed.
Snowball. In fact, it was surprising how many other satellite organizations that were formed in preventive medicine around the country, in various hospitals. We had several members that had started preventive medicine interest in institutions and hospitals around the United States, and foreign countries too. We had, as I said before, 5 foreign countries that were involved.
I noticed, Dr. Dude, that in your background that you're also a member of the American College of Clinical Hypnosis. Does that tie in any way with?
Well, as I said before, your mental attitude and your mental health is very important. In fact, there are more hospital beds filled with mentally ill people than any other
thing.
So it's something that I was interested in. In fact, I had 2 psychologists that worked for me for several years, and we used this for biofeedback. We used hypnosis, and we had 6 television units, 6 television units, and we used these as biofeedback instruments.
I see.
And it was very, very...
Well, are you still engaging in that procedure?
No, I'm not now, because I limit my practice to about 4 hours a day.
I see.
And I don't have time for that. I wish I did
have... You
have...
are staying very active.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah.
In fact, I have patients that ask me, say, Doc, when are you going to retire? And I said, well, I've been in this now 48 years. I'm going to practice another 20, then take another look at it.
Well, I knew you bound to just be acting on a limited basis, because I called your office here a while back, and your nurse or your receptionist said, and it was about 10:30 in the morning, she said he's already completed his day and gone home. So
I don't eat that early every day, but I do sometimes.
Yeah. Well, also, I understand that we have a number of doctors that have kind of, well, I wouldn't say, well, in a sense, in their association with you, you've got them, you've given them a boost in their practice. I can think of one particular who's now president of the Texas Osteopathic Medical Association.
Yeah.
Bowie, Texas. What's the young man's name?
Schreiner.
Schreiner, yeah.
Yes.
Lee Schreiner.
Well, I have had 14 doctors that come into my office and spend, most of them spent a year.
Mm-hmm.
And then they went out on their own. And 5 of them have already retired, and a couple of them have expired.
I see.
And the rest of them are scattered around over the country. So, and then besides that, I am responsible for 9 different individuals studying osteopathic medicine.
I see.
In fact,
well, have any of them come through TCOM?
No,
Yeah.
this is before.
I see. Mm-hmm.
Mickey Holcomb, that used to be on the state.
Oh, I knew him quite well.
Well, he was a cousin of mine. I was responsible for him studying medicine, osteopathic medicine.
Right. He was on the state examiner's board.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Mickey Holcomb, that's right.
Yeah.
And his brother was responsible, and he had 3 nephews that studied osteopathic medicine that are practicing now.
Yeah, I regret it. I was out of pocket. I don't remember where I was. Just he's been dead less than a year.
Yes.
And I didn't know it till after the services had already been
Well,
held.
I was out of the city too, and I didn't know it either till it was over.
Right. Because his practice, all of his professional practice was in El Paso, wasn't
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. He owned the hospital there in El Paso.
Yeah. Right.
I was talking a few minutes ago about exercise,
Yeah.
and I didn't say that, I don't think I mentioned the fact that I was the one that put these little rebounders or little trampolines on the
Oh,
market.
yes, I'm glad you brought that up because you almost sold me one once. I wish you had now. Give us a little more information. Give us a little more information about.
Of course.
It looked like a waffle.
Well, this was square.
Yeah.
This is the original ones. In fact, the demand was real great. In fact, I even shipped some of them by air freight to the Virgin Islands.
You did.
And then after I had a manager that took care of that exercise division, and it was very successful. But in about 8 or 10 months, other manufacturers got in the business and became so competitive.
Well, give us a little more of a graphic, physical picture of how they looked and how.
Well, of course, I think most individuals have seen these rebounders, as they refer to them now, instead of little trampolines.
I see.
And most health clubs and individuals all over the United States have those. But I was the one that really started this business, and that was
about 1972 or 3, wasn't
well,
it?
long in there, yes.
Because I remember you had part on a Lion Club program one time, and you brought one of them along, and we had it down at the old Texas Hotel, I believe.
Yes.
And you demonstrated at that time. That's the reason I.
Well, this fellow that was managing the manufacture of these, he was quite interested. In fact, he wanted to really get in the business on a huge scale, but he was busy getting representation for various conventions and so forth. And
you have something in your hand there that we kind of alluded to a moment ago. Let's discuss a little bit. I realize that your dream hadn't come completely true, but it's not completely dead, so there's a possibility it might be revived sometime.
Well,
share that information about your drawing that you've got there with the on preventive medicine.
Well,
Preventive Medicine Park.
This was a preventive medicine park that we had planned on building.
Dr. Jennings, tell us something about your Preventive Medicine Park.
Well, it's been a few years now, but a group of us got together, and I bought 80 acres of land on Precinct Line Road in Hearst. In fact, it was really in Colleyville. In fact, this is a rendering of the Preventive Medicine Park that we had the plans drawn for and the land bought. And we finally got a loan commitment for $10.5 million. But the interest at that time was 10 3/4% interest. And we just felt like it was too much of a gamble or too much of a responsibility. And so as a result, it never was completed.
Well, the interest is back up to about that now, so I guess you're going to postpone it a little while.
That's right. That's right. But then it is something that's needed and something that I'm sure will be fulfilled in.
Well, you still have it in mind to.
Oh yes, we still have it in
complete
mind.
if you possibly can.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You want to mention any of the people who were involved with you?
Well, yes. Here is a picture of Dr. Cordes. And myself, Dr. Lang, Dr. Carbach, John McNary, and Wayne English.
Now they're all DOs, aren't they?
Well, they're all, yes, all of those are DOs, yes.
Right.
And we have 300 individuals that were the lay people that, And but
You want to turn that around? Maybe we can kind of focus in on that group.
I don't know if this is a picture of the group that originally showed interest of promoting this project.
Well, do you keep in touch with them on what your pursuit might be?
I haven't here of late because I had heart surgery and whatnot. It's kind of limited my activities.
Right, I understand.
Of course, there's many things that happen in the preventive medicine field. For instance, here's a picture of me shaking hands with Alexander Haig and talking about preventive medicine. And I was very pleased to talk to him about preventive medicine, and he agreed that that was the only way or the best way to go in our health problems.
I see.
I might also, again, repeat this little story about Lion Robert McCulloch.
Bob McCulloch.
When he was elected president of Lions International, this was a magazine, the cover of the magazine, and this really shows what a... Is this better? And there was over 1 million copies of this all over the world, in 147 countries.
Right.
You being a good lion, you know about the...
A little more than 147 now, about 168.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. Also, getting back to preventive medicine, in '86, a couple of years ago, this was one of the publications, well, a Star Telegram. It came out, Doctor Pioneers Preventive Medicine.
Right.
And this was an excellent article and was a great boost to me because so many patients that have done well called and was happy with what they've done and wished me well.
Do you recall who wrote that?
Yes. Lynn Lunsford, J. Lynn Lunsford, Star Telegram.
What other extracurricular activities are you engaged in at this time, or have been down through the years, that have been paramount in your life?
Well, I have done developing more than any other one thing. I think I mentioned before that for the first 18 years I was in Fort Worth, I had something under construction. And I would like to do more of that now, but I just don't have the time and the energy to do that.
Well, now, I was in your offices here not terribly long ago, and you have a nice suite of offices there. You're on, what, Brown Trail?
Right.
Tell me something about that location, and didn't you once own that building? Now you're renting
yes.
the building you used to own?
I built the building. In fact, there was 3 other doctors that were involved, and it ended up that Dr. Cordes and I had the professional building, and then we sold it to an investment group. Now I'm a tenant there and pay rent.
Pay rent, huh?
Pay rent, yes. And of course, I don't think I mentioned about the nursing home, did I?
No, you haven't mentioned that.
Well, back at the Hurst General Hospital, I built a 100-bed nursing home, too.
What's the story on that now?
Well, it's an operation, but I divested myself.
I see. What's the name of that nursing home?
Well, it was the Hearst Mansion. That was the original. Now, they've changed it in the last 2 years. In fact, it's been sold twice since then.
Wasn't it called Autumn Leaves at one time?
Yes, it was. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
But they are still in operation.
That's right.
I hadn't heard much about it lately.
Yes.
I didn't know.
Yeah. Of course, now I was
Now
president.
you opened that up yourself in the beginning.
Oh, yes, I did.
What year was that? Well, that was how many years after you had the hospital going?
Well, I would say it was probably in about 65, 65 or 6.
Yeah.
Long,
A little over 20 years ago.
That's right.
Yeah.
Of course, I was active in the Civic Affairs in the HEB area. In fact, I was president of the Chamber of Commerce.
Right.
And
What year do you remember?
that was 65. 4 and 5, I believe.
Of the HEB Chamber of Commerce.
HEB,
Yeah.
yes. I think we had about 500 or 600 members at that time, but now they have a huge membership.
I see.
I'm still a member, but
Yeah.
I don't attend all the
I see.
chamber meetings. I go to some of the functions.
Yeah.
And then I was also one of the organizing directors of the First State Bank out there, which is on 121.
121. First
I was
day.
one of the organizing directors.
Mhm.
Herman Smith has been a very active real estate person and a bank owner, you might say, because he really controls about 3 or 4 banks now himself.
Mhm.
But he's been very active in civic work, and he's been very philanthropic to many, many organizations, and is really an outstanding citizen in our area.
Yeah. Let me tax you and pick your brain here just a minute, Dr. Dude. You've been in practice now almost 50 years.
Yeah.
Lift out 1 or 2 of, in other words, you have been a lifesaver, or that is, you've been in a health provider all those years and so forth. Can you think of 1 or 2 experiences that you had that stands out in your mind, which I'm not asking you to pat yourself on the back particularly, but something that you've done that does distinguish your profession to a little more than just a commonplace routine?
Well, I think one of the major points in my life was when I was a member of the Bureau of Hospitals for the AOA.
Okay.
And the things that happened during that time, the osteopathic profession was growing, and it was just interesting to travel around to the various hospitals and meet doctors around over the country, and I probably enjoyed that as much as any one activity that I've had. It seems that I'd like to do some of the things now that I was doing then, but I just don't have the time to do it.
What year was that? Or
That was 1957.
1957.
In fact, Amon Carter's first wife lived in Chicago, and during the time,
That's right.
during the time I was on the bureau, I visited her several times. Phil Russell introduced me to her the first time.
I see.
Then I would go back every few months, and I would always call her, and she would invite me over for dinner or for a meal there at the Drake.
There are not very many people in Fort Worth that know that part of Amon Carter's life.
That's right.
That's right.
And not only that, but you know, she was the one that gave the money for the Fort Worth Osteopathic Hospital x-ray, the first x-ray we had over here.
I see.
I met her at the station. She came down from Chicago for the opening of the Fort Worth Osteopathic Hospital, and she was not particularly anxious to be known that she had given the money. She
wasn't seeking any publicity.
She wasn't seeking publicity.
Yeah,
that's right. But she was a very, very fine woman.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Dude, can you lift up any experience you had with some patient, something that is memorable? I know that's a trite remark, because I know you've had thousands of patients, but...
Well, there are so many patients that it's in the category that you're speaking, that I can think about just treating patients manipulatively.
Now you're talking...
So many individuals do not know the difference between the allopathic profession and the osteopathic profession. Now, I was curious enough that I wanted to find out what the allopathic group was doing. That's the reason I went ahead and got my MD degree, so I could find out what the other fellow was doing.
I see.
Now, the difference in the two professions, as I see it, the osteopathic profession believes in treating the musculoskeletal system. And that is the difference between the two professions. And it's surprising how many individuals that have been relieved of their problems by just manipulation of the musculoskeletal system. And it's a little bit hard work to treat patients properly from a manipulative standpoint, but it has a very fundamental basis. And that's the reason that I have always wanted to be identified as a DO.
So you've never really put any emphasis on the fact that you also do have an MD degree.
No, I haven't, because
I've known you for 40 years, and I didn't know it till the other night
Yeah.
that you had an
Well,
MD degree as well.
that's correct, because it's a matter of philosophy.
Right.
You know, you can't be a Catholic and a Presbyterian. You have to be one or the other, because they both have different philosophical
Right.
beliefs and attitudes. And I'm happy that I've had the experience of being in a medical hospital like the Robert B. Greene, and also in Santa Rosa.
Now, where is Santa Rosa?
Santa Rosa's in San Antonio. It's a
Oh,
large
yes, I recall now.
Yeah, the Santa Rosa's in San Antonio, as well as Robert B. Greene.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the Green Hospital, but I am with Santa Rosa.
And with all the years that I've been practicing, we had no antibiotics. We didn't have any antihistamines. We didn't have all the things that we have today to treat patients with.
Right.
And when penicillin first came on the market, I was in San Antonio at the Robert B. Greene, and I was in charge of the distribution of penicillin, because there was scarce, and this was during the war years.
Right.
And it was surprising how many doctors were willing to pay premiums to get penicillin for private patients. And I was very careful that I didn't violate any rules, because I've had doctors offer me as much as $500 for enough penicillin to treat a patient for gonorrhea.
My goodness. Yeah.
So in those days, $500 was quite a bit of money.
Right.
But those are interesting things. That's an outstanding thing.
Speaking of penicillin, I don't want to intrude on your time at all, and I'm not going into any detail, but sometime in the future, I'd like to tell you my first experience with penicillin. It all took place after the war up in the Panhandle.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'll tell you about that sometime. Well, Dr. Dude, it has been an extreme and supreme, both, a pleasure to welcome you here today and to go over some of the highlights of your life and to reminisce over your memoirs. And it's a pleasure to say that we've enjoyed very much having you here at TCOM.
Well, I can say that TCOM should be proud of the things that you have done, Ray.
I didn't ask for that
I know
pat
you
on the back.
didn't, but I appreciate what you've done, and many, many others have nothing but good to say about you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.